It was just a nice dream. Back to the nightmare of being a PokeTuber. It's Halloween! Well, maybe not yet, but we need to get ready for spooky time, so what better way to do it than with some creepy and dark, curious facts of the series. But don't worry, we won't see any plain Lavender Town myths or screamers, except for this one. It will be just interesting facts with fun stories, and as always, a nice trip through the Pokemon world, this time with a ghostly touch. Make yourselves comfortable, grab something to eat, and get ready, because there's no turning back. There's a mystery in the 6th generation that is rarely mentioned. In Laverre City, location of the Fairy-type gym, there's a clock with 13 hours instead of 12. However, it's not an error, but a secret related precisely to the days when people believed in fairy tales, the witching hour. In various folklore, there is a brief period of time, just a few seconds around midnight, when strange things happen according to the eyes of normal people. For magical creatures and a chosen few with enough sensitivity, those few seconds are perceived as a whole hour in which our mundane world and the one of magical creatures are intertwined. But since it's only for a few moments, it's rare for a person to experience this phenomenon, unless, according to legends, if you are one of the chosen few who have been invited to such a meeting, you would experience an increase in your abilities and perception. At this time, encounters with mythical creatures would not take long to happen, and unthinkable barriers would begin to vanish. What does this have to do with Pokemon in this city in particular, though? Well, as the city with the first Fairy-type gym in the series, the atmosphere is definitely unlike anything we have experienced before. Something about its aesthetics and the talks with its citizens feels unreal. In the gym, they move you from one side to the other in something similar to a dollhouse, and the eyes of the leader and other characters seem to reflect something that others don't see. Could it be that in this spot of Kalos, this clash of the two worlds is particularly powerful, attracting many people capable of experiencing the 13th hour, for whom this strange clock in the middle of the city would be useful? Ultra Beasts. As beings coming from other dimensions, they are truly incomprehensible to most people. But they are still Pokemon, with a logic behind their appearance and behavior, and with their own story. The one that intrigued me the most at the time was the infamous glutton, Guzzlord. To find it, we must travel to the Ultra Ruin, a large city plunged in post-apocalyptic gloom, but that maintains a nostalgic feeling. It is, in fact, Hau'oli City, the capital of our beloved Alola, in a completely devastated form. The music that welcomes us is the same, but reversed and distorted by interference, turning the happy and welcoming tune into a grim composition that warns you not to go ahead. If you ignore the warning in its center, you will find the remnant of what caused everything. Guzzlord, devouring the remains of what was once a happy place. Because this Pokemon is the very incarnation of gluttony. It devours absolutely everything in its path. Pokemon, people, mountains, rivers, and even seas. Its insatiable hunger gobbles up everything, to the point of collapsing an entire world. For indeed, this grim picture is not limited to one city, except for a few who decided to stay, like the man who welcomes us when we arrive from an ultra wormhole, perhaps a researcher who risks his life to document the monster. The entire world population was forced to flee to another planet, implying that the outbreak of this species turned the whole world into a disaster. All the clues, the remains of signs, buildings, and elements so identical to those of our world hint that this dimension, unlike that of the rest of the Ultra Beasts, was practically identical to ours until the manifestation of Guzzlord. But what is this being? How could it emerge so suddenly and increase its population fast enough that humanity could not fight it and was forced to flee? Well, we must enter the territory of speculation since the game doesn't tell us directly. But there are some clues to theorize with. For example, we find the only inhabitant of the city wears a special suit because, as he says, breathing too much air in the place is dangerous. If we investigate a bit after capturing Guzzlord, we discover that there was an incident at a power plant in the past. Could it be that they are showing us this information because those two events are related, and Guzzlord was born as a mutation of some other Pokemon, one with a huge appetite from the start, that by mutating would suddenly gain the ability to gobble up everything, obtaining unlimited energy that it would use to quickly reproduce, causing the end of the world in a short time? Another idea, perhaps not so imaginative and more feasible, according to what we have seen in the game, is that its world is more similar to ours than we thought. If so, the events of Sun and Moon story took place in the same way, including the opening of ultra wormholes throughout Alola at the hands of Lusamine. In our dimension, with the group effort of the Kahuna and the guardian deities, we managed to defeat them and drive them away from Alola. But perhaps in this timeline, the most potentially dangerous one would manage to defeat them and escape to a place where it would devour everything without anyone being able to stop it, accumulating immense amounts of energy and reproducing itself so quickly that no one in the world could stop it. A terrifyingly close picture of what could happen if a being with the characteristics of the Ultra Beasts were to suddenly appear in the real world. Because if the post-game of Ultra Sun and Moon wanted to tell us something, it's how a small change in our actions and decisions can end up leading to a completely different story. And this melancholic tale is living proof of the extent to which we are masters of our own destiny. On Route 217 in Sinnoh, in the worst of the blizzard and with the snow at navel height, we find a small house where we can take a break. The only person inside is a woman who tells us,
"A person, a rare sight. Thank you for visiting. A gift."
And gives us the spell tag, an object that within the canon of the game boosts the power of ghost-type moves, but perhaps this is a more literal spell because if we go back to the house, there's no one inside. The spell tag is called Ofuda in Japanese, a talisman that is placed to seek protection, but in the game is a cursed Ofuda, looking for the opposite, to hurt the wearer, thus increasing the evil power of ghosts. The characters around tell us about possible hauntings in the area, and judging by her characteristics, it's clear that this woman was in fact a Frostlass, a female ghost Pokemon who harbors a great resentment towards humans due to her past life. She appears in the icy mountains where she died, charming lost travelers with her false hospitality in order to complete her revenge. If Frostlass considers the prey attractive, in other words, if it resembles the lover who betrayed her and for whom she lost her life, she freezes it in the cruelest and most painful way possible to use it as a decorative object forever and ever. But maybe she sees an unexpected kindness in the player's eyes, or maybe not even a Frostless like you. Either way, she spares your life, leaving you with a twisted little gift that will make misfortune follow you until seeing the sun shine again is a distant dream. Those of you who have played the third generation games and traveled around Hoenn probably remember New Mauville. At first glance, it's an old power plant supplying the region, and we only visited to deactivate the overheated generator at Watson's request. But after leaving the place, we cannot help but be left with a bitter aftertaste and many doubts. If it's just a power plant, what is it doing there? In a deliberately hidden basement under a bridge and behind a key that only the gym leader had? Why such distressing and depressing music, which seems to scream helplessness and despair? Perhaps its name, New Mauville, gives us clues of a place with much deeper implications than we thought. In the remakes, after entering, we can see a part of the site that was not visible in the original games. A blocked entry that implies that there are more lower floors. And indeed, Watson confesses that beyond the generator floor, the site is no less than 69 floors deep. A colossal construction that obviously doesn't make sense as a normal power plant, even if it were to end up being used for that purpose. New Mauville is literally that, a New Mauville city that was built as an underground bunker intended to house all the city's inhabitants, in an emergency that someone apparently foresaw. The new city would seek to save as many lives as possible down there, but they had to get supplies and energy from somewhere, right? In the end, the project was terminated for unknown reasons, but the story doesn't end there, and it gets even creepier. In the remakes, the abandoned ship, a passenger ship that was wrecked for unknown reasons, was replaced with Sea Mauville, another old power plant that was precisely going to supply New Mauville in the most terrible way possible. In the middle of the sea, far from prying eyes, they were going to obtain that infinite energy using the Pokemon's life force as a source. The remnants, fragments of the past that we find in its ruins are each more disturbing than the last. Who would be the chosen ones to survive the end of the world? What event would lead to this cataclysm, and who was the one that predicted it? What changed to make them decide to terminate it and throw away such a colossal investment? There are still many questions left in this story, but it's clear that in the seemingly innocent Pokemon stories, there is a place reserved for darkness. Mount Silver. site of the ultimate fight. One of the most iconic moments of the series, home to powerful Pokemon and countless dangers, deserted except for a select few. The tension is noticeable in the atmosphere. There is no doubt about that, and even its music has a certain despair and loneliness that makes the feeling even more serious. Both the urban legend that Red died from the cold, and it's his silent ghost that battled with us, as well as the mythical Pokemon Lost Silver, take place here. I think it's not a coincidence that so many of the classic horror stories of the series have this place as setting. Its atmosphere invites that, perhaps more intentionally than we thought. The leaked Gold and Silver beta reveal a multitude of locations that would not be in the final versions. One of them would be right in the foothills of Mount Silver. The small route we would see in the final games was to be a large forest, the largest in the entire game. There doesn't seem to be anything special about it, at least not enough to consider changing it. But if we look at its labyrinthine structure, we realize the dark meaning that this place was going to have. Mount Silver is based on Mount Fuji. In fact, in the beta it even had that name. As one of the greatest symbols of Japan, it was ideal to represent what was going to be the perfect closure of the franchise. But the forest before it corresponds geographically and was inspired by Aokigahara, aka the Suicide Forest, where many people in the country go to take their own lives. Although access is allowed, the site is plagued by ominous warning signs dedicated to encouraging people thinking of doing so to seek help. Apart from the fact that such an inspiration is far from appropriate, the labyrinthine nature of the place, the dark music, and the abundance of tall grass with powerful Pokemon were going to make this a tortuous place to go through, even more than Mount Silver itself. Something that added to the origin already seen would be too grim for a family-friendly game. Changing it was a good choice, considering the mess that followed with much more innocent things. Although all of this was ultimately locked away in the sands of time, Mount Silver would remain the scene of many mysterious tales, stories, and legends. But no matter how lost we are in the fog, there's always hope to see the sky again and the beautiful diamond dust. Love and kisses to all.